Hey, Glenn from Made by Folk here. Today we're going to try something a little bit different and record the podcast as a video as well. So if you find this useful, let me know. Today we're talking to Rik Lomas from SuperHi in New York, and he chatted to us about founding a company in the US, coming from the UK, and also their scholarship that they're running this month, which will help someone gain access to their entire library of lessons to help them learn to code. So hope you find this one useful, and let me know if you want to see more of this. See you soon. Record on that. Okie dokie. Rik, thanks very much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So for anyone who doesn't know who I'm talking to today, give us a quick mandatory intro to who you are and what you do.
Sure. Hi, I'm Rik Lomas. I am the CEO and founder of SuperHi. We are an online code and design school for creatives all around the world. We teach in 77 different countries right now in 15 or 16 different time zones, and we have a lot of very creative people taking our courses and buying our products.
For me, it'd be really interesting to hear kind of what made you start SuperHi. What initially gave you the drive or motivation to set up your own company and move to the US?
Yeah, I'll start with the US thing actually. My wife got a job in New York at New York University, and for me, it was always a case of I work on the internet, so I don't really mind where I work. I can actually take what I do and just kind of transplant it anywhere else. And because of that, I kind of felt like, why have something like a code school or a design school that's just in one place? We were kind of missing out. I used to run a code school in London called Steer, and we were a classroom, and people would come on Monday morning and leave on Friday evening. And I always kind of felt like we were missing a lot of people, because if you were coming to one of these schools, you had to kind of carve out 5 days. You had to travel to London or live in London, and you had to be in a certain place at a certain time. And I kind of felt like, we had people traveling from Denmark all the way to London just for our schools. And I was kind of like, that's very flattering, but you can learn this stuff with us from anywhere. And I always wanted it to be a more online kind of first experience, because you were learning digital skills, and it's like, why have digital skills in a classroom when you're doing this stuff on the internet anyway? So for me, it was kind of like, how do you take that? The classroom stuff does have a lot to it. You are in a certain place, you're interacting with people. How do you kind of replicate that thing of being in a certain place online? And there's kind of upsides and downsides to both. And we're trying to replicate what we have in a classroom space, but online, and kind of give a lot of that kind of attention that you would generally get. And because we can do it online, we basically can hire people from all around the world, and we can hire the best people in the world as part of that. We're a remote company. We kind of can have people we've got one guy who lives on a farm in Scotland. We've got people who live in Brooklyn. We've got one person who lives in London. And it's like, we can pick all these best people from all around the world. And I suppose kind of going back to the question of why even start this in the first place, I think it was more just, I don't know, you kind of have to be a little bit arrogant, unfortunately, to start a business, because you're thinking like, I can do this better than anyone else in the world. And I'm not a kind of generally arrogant person, but there is that kind of part of me which is like, how people are learning right now kind of sucks, and it's not really targeted to creatives. And there's a lot of kind of design and code schools which are very mainstream. They're kind of trying to teach everyone in the world to code. All of these kind of digital skills weren't applicable to everyone, and people learn in different ways. And I wanted to take something that was very much a creative style to the way that people were being taught these skills. And I think, learning to code or learning digital skills isn't for everyone. And I know there's a big push for everyone should learn to code, like journalists should learn to code, and the milkman should learn to code. And it's like, that's fine, but, the people who need it the most are the people who are working in these kind of media already. So, designers and photographers and illustrators, they're the ones that kind of need these skills a lot more. And the way that they learn is completely different than the way that a milkman would learn. So we just wanted to kind of take a little bit more kind of niche way to do things and kind of say, it's not for everyone. We're being a little bit more specialist, but because we're being specialist, this is kind of how we think that these people would learn quicker and a lot better than a kind of mass market kind of version of what we try and do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think my worry was always when I was trying to learn some code, and I'm by no means gifted in development. But when I was trying to do online classes, I always felt that I needed the physical class just to kind of force me into like a routine.
Yeah.
I guess because you guys are being so much more specific to a target group, it means that you can really try and tailor your courses to, like how people like me are working and how much time they have and how they get into that routine of learning.
I mean, a lot of people kind of ask us, like, can I do this part-time? Can I do it at the weekends? All of the courses that we try and do are very flexible on purpose because, we know that people are busy. Like most of the people that we have on our courses, probably like 95%, are either full-time people or freelancers. And I don't think that people should quit their jobs to go on a course for a 3-month course because I don't know, it just feels very privileged to have the ability to say, I can quit my job for 3 months and go and learn something else. And, there are universities and there are ways to do this in different ways, but, you shouldn't have to quit your job to learn skills that help your career. And that was something that we kind of build into what we do is, how do we make this both affordable and also, flexible on purpose? Because, not everyone has time to kind of spend 10, 12, 15 hours a week or even 40 hours a week to learn these skills. So we kind of almost like reverse engineered it in a way, like what would be, the thing that I would want to go in and what would be the thing that people that I know would want to go on. And it's kind of reversing that a little bit and going like, well, how much time do people have each week and what is the maximum that they can actually spend doing this stuff? And how do we build those courses that kind of fit around that? Like, for instance, one of our biggest courses is an 8-week course and it's around about 4 hours a week. And the way that we design it is in kind of almost like modules, so you can kind of dip in and out. So, you could spend an hour a day doing it. So you could spend one evening for 4 nights. You can spend a whole day at the weekend doing it in a binge. And we're trying to make it a lot more flexible. And obviously because it's tailored to creatives and designers, we want it to be like a fun experience, not like homework or at the end of the day having to like trudge through this kind of like, oh, I've got an extra hour of work to do at the end of the day. Like we want it to be quite fun and quite creative on purpose. So, most of the things that we teach are flexible and can be re-engineered and rethought about and remixed. And it can kind of, we want to kind of ignite that creative spark of like, oh cool, I can do this. And it's not as hard as I initially thought.
Where do you see SuperHi moving forward? Like where do you want to get to?
I mean, at the moment, most of the kind of courses that we do are around digital coding, so mostly about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that kind of thing. But in the long term, we kind of want to move away just from coding to kind of more areas of digital skills and creative skills. So we kind of want to broaden that range of not only courses, but also products that we do. And the kind of, I suppose, mantra that we try and say to ourselves is, how can we do things that help the creative industries? And that doesn't necessarily mean courses or books or whatever we do right now. And it could be a total change in what we do. If we see a kind of thing where it's like, people in the creative industries are struggling to find work, or their flow of money on freelance is something that's patchy, is there ways to kind of help there, rather than it just be like, we're just an education company that teaches people to code. We're trying to look at it in a, how do we help the creative industries in a kind of bigger sense? And, we're starting with things that we already know. Like I was a coder, I teach a lot of stuff in the past, but I want to kind of expand that into different areas as well. So it's not just coding, it's not just design skills, it's not just courses, it could be anything that helps creatives. That's not going to be like instant, and it's not going to be like, we're not suddenly going to have 10 products overnight, but I think in the long term it's definitely going to be like a lot. We're trying to move away from that kind of idea of just one thing that we do.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a really good idea, getting into one niche first of all, establishing a way of working and I guess a brand that people recognize and trust, and then expanding into different fields from there is definitely the best way of doing it. So now that how long has SuperHi been going now? How many years?
2 years.
2
So
years.
we started in October 2016. So yeah, it's been two years and a month.
Awesome. And what do you feel like now you've got 2 years behind you? What did you learn along the way, or what did you underestimate when you first set up SuperHi?
I think the kind of main problem was like just overworking myself and just kind of really like trying to do too much. And you see a lot of people who are like hustle online, and they're the kind of worst people to kind of listen to. And you don't see the kind of underlying backstory of like how they've got to that point. And just a kind of quick example of like Gary Vaynerchuk, who's the kind of biggest proponent of hustle. He was given a business by his dad, and it was already turning over millions. And it's like, it's easy to say hustle when you've already got that start. And I'm kind of always trying to acknowledge things like the privilege that I have as a kind of like white guy who can easily raise things like VC money in New York. And with that, there kind of goes things like, how much time actually should I spend on this per week? And for a while I was working pretty much 7 days a week, and been doing that for probably about 2 years. And so quite recently actually, I was working probably about 10 till 8, 7 days a week. So in the office every weekend, trying to do stuff. And I think just kind of getting things in place over the last few months to kind of go, I need some kind of system so I can kind of like not be in the office every single day. And I think by doing that, you start to think about all the little things, like what is the most urgent things, and you kind of get trained Pavlov's dog style into like firefighting all of this stuff and not thinking about a bigger vision, where it's like, okay, this needs fixing, this needs fixing, this needs fixing, and it's not stepping back and going like, how can we fix this in a bigger way, rather than like, all right, small little fixes everywhere. And I think for me it was kind of like, with spending so much time on it, I think it was also just like, I was getting fatter because I was just stress eating, and then I wasn't sleeping very well, and I wasn't exercising. And I think, those were the kind of biggest mistakes that kind of I started with, is, just really kind of not looking after myself, and just both like physically and mentally as well, and just kind of like putting, the kind of cliche of 110% into a business, and not just kind of sitting back and going like, cool, right, what should this actually be, and what is the kind of like we just talked about, the bigger vision for this stuff. And
I guess it's tricky at the beginning when you're just putting, the first couple of months and you're really trying to make that idea happen. It's probably difficult at that point to really see the big picture, because you're just trying to figure out what that picture even is showing you.
Yeah, and I mean, even with like we have like 5 staff in total at the moment, and I think people think that we're a lot bigger than we actually are. And I think with that, you kind of have that pressure of people depending on you to do things, and paying their bills, and that kind of comes with that kind of stress of like, okay, people are relying on me, so let's try and do as much stuff as possible in the shorter time as possible. And I think we're in the kind of rare position of being a startup that doesn't lose money every month, and we are, yeah, thank
Cheers
you
to that.
I know, and it's kind of a rare position to be in. So what we try and do is like, I think that's kind of helped to get that pressure off a little bit, knowing that we can like survive for a long time. And for me, it's like that kind of condensement of those last 2 years where I've just been like stress working. Now we can get to the point of like, how do we make this a 20, 40, 100-year company? Like, that's kind of where I want it to be in the long term. I don't want it to be like, let's put loads of investment money into kind of shoot for the stars and explode, which is what a lot of companies do. I think it's like trying to do it in a sensible way that kind of makes it a lot more safe for not just like the customers and students that we have, but like the staff and what is most helpful for the creative industry in general. Like, I know I kind of go back to that, how do I help as many of the creative industry as possible? But I think that's kind of true. It's like, you know, me burning out by like spending every single day in the office doing 10 to 8 probably isn't actually the best thing for me, but also the best thing for the company, and also as kind of partly what is the best thing for like what we can do for the creative industries as well.
Mm-hmm. You're right. So you mentioned that your team's 5 people, and
Yep.
I presume you said someone's based in Scotland, someone's based in New York with you. So you're a remote team.
Yeah, we're fully remote. We are in 4 different countries. So there's 2 in New York, there's 1 in Toronto, 1 in Scotland, 1 in London. And that was kind of basically from my point of view, like how I wanted to run a company was like I wanted to hire the best people in the world and not just like the best people in New York. And because we can do that, we get a lot of people applying for our jobs. We get a lot of talented people. You know, last job that we did, we had people like I think we had like 500 applications from like all over the world, and it's very flattering that people want to work with us. I'm like, you know, this small startup, it's, you know, a bunch of people all around the world. It's kind of like really flattering. But with that as well, it's like we were looking through all these kind of people, and it's like such a range of different people that we can actually work with, and it's so hard to kind of pick what you kind of want from that. And I don't know, it's nice that people want to work with a remote company. I feel like there's a bit of a move towards that in the long term, where, you know, I've been freelance for such a long time and working with remote companies anyway. So, you know, when I was working with lots of small startups as a freelancer, it was generally me not being in the office with them. I would be sat in my own office, even if it was in the same city, do my work and working with them. And that didn't really matter too much of being in the same office. Things got good, things did work, and things got done. And I think that kind of led me into thinking like, if I want to build courses that are online and people are going to be not in the same place as us, surely that also leads to people not being in the same office as us. And if we can work remotely and make it work, then people can learn remotely as students with us. So, you know, that was kind of initial thinking of like, you know, part of me was how do we do this in the best possible way, where is it a bit hypocritical to kind of go, anyone can learn online, but then have all the stuff in one place? And I don't know if it's hypocritical, but I think, you know, we can definitely, if we can make tools that work for us and make things and processes that work for us, and that kind of translates well into like how we teach as well. Because if we're seeing that, say, you know, a staff member feels isolated, then surely then customers might feel isolated in the same way. So how do we make staff members not feel isolated? How do we make students not feel isolated? And, you know, it's not a perfect solution, but I think there's definitely ways that we've kind of worked towards like fixing those kind of issues.
Yeah, definitely. You guys have always been like helping out people to try and get people who maybe couldn't afford the course or were struggling to get started with development and coding into SuperHi. And you guys are running a scholarship at the beginning of the year, or when does it start?
Yeah, so it's pretty soon, middle of November to middle of December. We're doing an open scholarship, so anyone in the world can apply. You'll win basically all of our courses, which is 10 different courses in lots of different skills, and open access, so you can take them anytime you want. And like the last scholarship we did, we had a lot of people apply. It was very popular, and we picked some really good people who've done a lot of really great things with it as well. Like, we're still seeing the results from that already, and it's great to see like people who definitely wouldn't be able to afford the courses that we do right now take 10 different courses that we do and actually apply real skills to them. You know, we've had people on our courses get jobs, change careers, go freelance, even get promotions doing this stuff. So I think it's very important to take what we're doing with scholarships. We try and do them, 3 or 4 times a year, and really try and like see what these people can do with them.
Amazing. So what do the people have to do to be able to apply?
They just need to go to our website, superhi.com, and find the scholarship page and apply. It's a very short scholarship application. We send it to a judge, and we take away your name and email address. So we don't get any kind of bias, or we try and reduce as much bias as possible. And we judge it based on application. So our judge basically picks who they find the most applicable for this. So make your application's good, make them as good as possible, and our judge will pick the best winner.
Amazing. Yeah, anyone that has a chance to do this should definitely try and apply. We'll link everything on the website below. Rik, thanks very much for talking to me today.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. No problem at all. Thank you.